Hey there, and welcome to The Holy Politician. My name is Monica Maybank, and the purpose of this podcast is to introduce you to federal policy, state policy, and local policy through the lens of truth and holiness. So, as a former federal lobbyist, my goal is to be able to present to you digestible, tangible information that you can reflect on and pray about as a Christian who's active in society, meaning that you are taking an active interest in the governance of your state, of your city, your county, and even at the national level. And so today I want to talk about federal waste or federal budget. And we're going to talk about both. So, who likes budgets? Raise your hand. Let me put my hand down because I do not like budgets. I do a lot of budgeting, but I don't necessarily like budgets. A wise and wealthy woman once said that budgets suck. Who can agree with that? I couldn't agree more. If I had it my way, I would never, ever, ever use a budget. But because we have to have fiscal accountability and responsibility both inside and outside of our home, budgets are necessary. And when it comes to the United States government, they're not very good at budgeting. They're actually very bad at budgeting. They're bad at spending. They're bad at saving. But they are good at incurring debt, like a lot of American citizens are good at incurring debt. And so, if you ever are looking for advice or counsel or instruction on how to manage your money, do not look to the federal government. The federal government, according to reports from the Government Accountability Office, how much money do you think they waste every year? Just take a guess. Whatever your number is, I'm sure it's not high enough. The federal government wastes an average of $236 billion, billion with a B, a capital B, every year. And this in 20 fiscal year 2023, they wasted $236 billion on improper payments. And so this is money that is being improperly allocated. They're overpaying in some certain cases. In some cases, they're underpaying, which is hard to believe. But that's actually a gross underestimate of the actual payments, the actual improper payments that they made in 2023, because that does not account for money being spent by Medicare and Medicaid, which probably is a whole lot more. And so since fiscal year 2003, federal agencies have reported about $2.7 trillion in total improper payments. Even uttering that out of my mouth is blowing my mind. Like if you had a household budget, right, and you were wasting, say, $10,000 every year on improper payments, would you not notice? And would you not make a shift in your budgeting and a shift in your expenses? $236 billion is not insignificant. And yet, every year, we're wasting billions and billions of dollars of taxpayer money. And that should concern every last one of us. And we should be holding our policymakers accountable for this. But this is not something that you often hear about in government. You often hear about, that there is a budget that's going to be passed or not passed. We often hear about things that are kind of ancillary to our everyday lives, like i.e. reproductive rights. But when it comes to the way that money is being spent and wasted in federal government, that's something that we should care about, right? And so, why should we care? That's the next question. Well, we should care because right now the United States is in a massive amount of debt, right? So, if we're wasting $236 billion a year, just imagine if we were to save that money and how that would alleviate the $36 trillion in debt that we are in right now. Yes, that's $36 trillion with a T, ladies and gentlemen. So if you took the 340 million people living in the United States, that would be $100,000 worth of debt per United States citizen. Some of us don't even make $100,000 a year. But to imagine that each person represents $100,000 worth of debt. So tomorrow when you go to work, when you go to the grocery store, start counting heads and see how much money that adds up to. If there's 10 people in your line, that's what? $10 million worth of debt or some ludicrous number, right? So $100,000 worth of debt for every United States citizen. That's how much debt we're in. And it's mind-boggling to know that. And so we should be concerned about this just like we're concerned about every other issue, because the more in debt we are, the less the less viability we have as a nation to barter, to trade, to do business with other foreign nations. It's a disaster. And so what is the government spending your taxpayer dollars on? Well, the government is spending most of your taxpayer dollars on three things in particular. Let's see if you can guess what those three things are. Number one, Medicare and Medicaid. So yes, our social safety net, which includes Medicare and Medicaid, includes a significant amount of that debt. Social Security, yes. War. Social Security includes a big part of that. And yes, defense. And so anything concerning our national defense, our international defense, anything to do with the Department of Defense, the Department of the State, those things are costing us money. I can't tell you how many large corporations are becoming multi-billion-dollar organizations off the backs of war. And so if you want to become a millionaire or a billionaire, start selling things to do with missiles and things to do with areas in the areas of defense. So it's lucrative. It's significantly lucrative, but it's also costing us a whole lot of money. So my question to you is, have you ever used Medicare or Medicaid? Some of us have, right? What about some of us that are on Social Security? That's where our money is going. Not that those things are not important, but we're also wasting and overpaying money in those areas because there's not enough scrutiny and there's not enough accountability, if you can believe it. There's a lot of red tape at the federal government, but there's not enough accountability when it comes to the way that our taxpayer dollars are being spent. So in 2023, what did we waste our money on? Well, according to the Government Accountability Office, 43% of that $200 billion that we wasted went to Medicare and Medicaid. 18% went to pandemic unemployment assistance. So for those that lost their jobs due to the pandemic, 18% went to that. 9% went to the earned income tax credit. But again, this is money that was improperly spent. So there is an overpayment of unemployment assistance. There is an overpayment of the earned income tax credit. The PPP loans, how many of you got those PPP loans as small business owners, where there was significant overpayment of Paycheck Protection Program loans and that loan forgiveness program, which became a disaster because people were lying to get money from the federal government. And so why am I talking about all of this? Well, the federal government is scheduled to shut down this weekend if Congress cannot agree to a temporary spending measure that has implications for our federal budget, right? So every few months, there's something called a continuing resolution, which is a lazy way to do your budget in Congress. They're not mapping out a new budget. They're basically building on or continuing on the same budget that they've been operating under for several Congresses now. And so this continuing resolution needs to be funded through March. If not, certain services will shut down this weekend, to include the TSA for those of you that are traveling via airports for the holiday season. And so the government shutdown could happen. I mean, every few months, people are talking about the government could potentially shut down. Hopefully it does not shut down. But there has been some drama, which is typically the case on Capitol Hill. So as believers, we need to be praying for wise counsel, wise counselors, for politicians that care about the people of the United States more than they care about being reelected. And there are some people that will go rogue on Capitol Hill just because they know that they want to do what's right for the American people. And so right now there is a bill that is floating around on Congress, which is the continuing resolution that would provide funding for things like Medicare and Medicaid, which you can never stop talking about Medicare and Medicaid because it's a $1 billion program. It includes things like funding for national security, farm assistance, and it includes several $1 billion for hurricane aid because of the 2 hurricanes that hit several states this past fall. So almost $34 billion is supposed to be appropriated for hurricane assistance. But that also includes money for farmers, things for infrastructure rebuilding. Obviously, there's a lot of rebuilding that needs to happen across several states, including the state that I live in, which is the state of Florida. And so if we can get this funding passed, then some money, especially for people at the individual level that are relying for some of this hurricane relief, they can start to make modifications to their homes. We have our neighbor that has a tree that basically is almost on his house. And some of these changes in the logistics of working with insurance companies, a lot of that is contingent on what happens with FEMA and is contingent on whether or not FEMA has enough funding to provide that aid. And so people are waiting for this relief. And hopefully they won't have to continue to wait. But the bottom line is we need the federal government to be better stewards of your money, right? You pay taxes every year to the federal government. If you are a worker, if you're employed, there are state taxes, there are local taxes, but there's also something called the income tax. And most of us are paying the income tax. And so we will see what happens over the next 48 hours. But the prayer is that we will continue to have a budget so that people can have their jobs, but also pray that the government becomes a better steward of their resources. Because as Christians, it is mandated that we, one, oh man, nothing but love, and that we remain out of debt. And two, that we are good stewards of the resources that God has given us. So let's pray that the federal government and our congressional leaders on Capitol Hill are making the right decisions for the American people, particularly as we have a new Congress that will be coming. They will be taking their seats in January, and we have a new president that will be taking the oath of office in January. And essentially, we will have a Republican-led national government. And so Congress will be, the majority will be Republicans in the House and the Senate, as well as that the executive office will be inhabited by a Republican. So Republicans will be making some interesting decisions, particularly within the first 100 days. So just pray for the safety and security of our borders, pray for the safety of our troops, pray for the safety of our households, pray that we would be better stewards of our finances. I pray that you all have a wonderful Christmas. This will be our last slide until 2025. And so my prayer is that you glean some kind of insight from this podcast over the past year, as I've been consistently going live on YouTube and also turning in my live on Instagram. YouTube is the best way to tune into this channel, on the Holy Politician on YouTube. But we won't be going live for next year. We will be posting videos that will not be showing up live, but they will be showing up every Thursday. So stay tuned for that. And I hope to see you soon on a broadcast. God bless you and take care.